Hey everyone, Mr. Voikin here, Unit 6, Lesson 6, and this is where we've sort of been working in the last lessons to get to. So you should recognize this form right here, a squared or ax squared plus bx plus c. So far we're doing it where the number that's in front of the x squared, so in the first term right there, is a 1. Okay, but now we're going to be doing it where x does not, or sorry, the a does not equal 1. Now, if you look at the class example 3a here, you can see that there is a 2 in front of the x. Now, in previous lessons, what we would do is factor that 2 out, and that would leave us sort of with like an x squared, da 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 da. But in this case, notice that we can't factor the 2 out of there. It will divide, 2 will divide into 2 and into 6, but it will not divide into 7. And we can't break this down with the decimals. So we can't pull a 2 out of there and be left with like x squared plus 3.5x plus 3. That just doesn't work. So we want integer values only in the positions A, B, and C. So, that being said, what do we do? How do we figure this out then? Well, it's actually quite simple. There's just sort of one extra step involved. That's it. So we have this original format. Now, normally what we were doing was going, let's take a look at the last value, which is 6. And we're going to go, that can break down into 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. And then I would be looking for something in this case that adds to, or multiplies to 6 and adds together to give us 7, which would be this 1 and 6. But now that we've got that 2 in front right there, it's not going to work out properly. So what we need to do is take that first term, the value of that first term, the number that's there, and multiply it by the last term. So really what we're doing is going a times c. And in this case, a times c is going to give us a 12. I'm going to do the same thing though. I'm going to break that down into 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. And then I'm looking for two values that add up to a positive 7, which is the 3 and the 4. Now, at this stage in, if it was a trinomial where a equals 1, we would basically break that into two binomials and we're done. But in this case, what we need to do is we need to keep the first term and keep the last term, and then we're going to take this middle term right here and we're going to sort of split it up. So we got a positive 7, so we got a positive 7x, so I can split that up into plus 3x and plus 4x. But I'm better to start with the plus 4x, and the reason is that 2 and 4 have a common factor, 2. And the positive 3x right there has a common factor between 3 and 6, because we're going to break this up into two different sort of binomials like this and try and factor something common out, which is what we did in the previous lessons, if you can remember. So notice that this 4x plus 3x is the same as this 7x that's right there. I've just sort of split it up. Okay, so I'm going to do what I said. I'm going to put a bracket around those two and a bracket around those two, and I'm going to pull something out of that first bracket. So I'm going to pull out, and I also need to have a squared right there. So I'm going to pull out a 2x, and that's going to leave us with an x plus 2. Which means in the second one, I need to have an x plus 2, if you remember how we did that. So notice that if I divide or pull a 3 out of here, which is like dividing this by 3 and dividing that by 3, 3x divided by 3 leaves me with x, and 6 divided by 3 leaves me with a 2. So I pulled out a positive 3, and now what are my two binomials that I'm going to be left with, well, my x plus 2, which is common here, and that leaves me with a 2x plus 3. Okay, so that's example A, and you just have to sort of follow this process, and you'll have no problem with these at all. Okay, so that was example A. Let's move on to example B. So we're starting off with 5x squared plus 7x plus 2. So what you want to do every time is say, is there anything common that I can pull out of these three terms? And in this case, the answer is no. And this is not a 1, so we're going to need to use the same process that we did right here. So I'm going to multiply the 5 times the 2, and I get 10. The factors of 10 are 1 and 10, and 2 and 5. And I'm looking for two numbers that add together to give me 7, which is going to be the 2 and the 5. So in this case, I'll put the 5 first, because it's going to go with that 5 right there, and I'll put the 2 back here with that 2. So remember what we're doing. We are keeping the first term, keeping the last term, and splitting up that 7 into plus 5x and plus 2x. Then I'll put brackets around that one, brackets around that one, and I want to factor out something common in this first trinomial. So you can see that 5x is common, leaving us with x plus 1, which means down here, in order for this to work, I'm going to need to be left with an x plus 1. So what are we going to divide each one of these by? Well, 2. So 2x divided by 2 gives us x, and gives us, let's try that again. 2x divided by 2 gives us x, and 2 divided by 2 gives us 1. So that's good. I pulled out a positive 2. So what are the two binomials that this trinomial that we started with will factor into? Well, x plus 1, and the second one will be 5x plus 2. Now again, how do I know I'm right? Well, I've said this in every video previous to this. We just need to use FOIL to expand this one out. So x times 5x gives us 5x squared. X times 2 gives us plus 2x. 1 times 5x gives us plus 5x. And 1 times 2 gives us plus 2. If I now gather like terms and put it in descending order, I'm going to have 5x squared plus 7x plus 2. And that's exactly what we started off with, so we are correct. All right, here we go again. Class example 4. Factor these out. So let's start off with A again. Let's see if we can blast through these things. Again, 6, 17, and negative 3. There is nothing that is common in those three terms. So we're going to start with that. And we're going to multiply 6 times 3 in this case, which is giving us 18. The factors of 18 are 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. And this time they're going to subtract to give us a positive 17, so that's going to be 18 minus 1. So again, I need to put the 18 with the plus symbol. So it's going to be plus 18x and minus 1x, and together that is a positive 17x. So same thing, keep the first term. Keep the last term. Now, where am I going to put the 18 and where will I put the 1? In this case, it doesn't really matter, but I'll put the plus 18x right there and the minus x right here. We're going to put brackets around both of those, and we're going to pull out something common. So I can pull out a 6 and an x, and I'm going to be left with x plus 3, which means I should be able to pull out an x plus 3 out of the second one. Notice that we're back to this situation where it almost looks the same, except the signs are reversed on both of these terms. So I got a negative x, negative 3, and now I've got a positive x, positive 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a -1 out of this one right here and put it down there. So I'm factoring out a -1, which will change the signs inside this bracket right here. Okay, so now I just need to finish it off by saying the x plus 3's are common, and outside of that we've got a 6x minus 1. Okay, so these are exactly the same as the last example that I did, except in this case there's the last term is negative. Okay, so I'll move this over to the side. Let's move on to example B. Again, first term, second term, third term, nothing is common. The first, the A, in this case, is a 3. It's not a 1, so I'm going to have to use this new format that we have. So we're starting off with 3n squared minus 2n minus 8. 3 times 8 is 24. That breaks down into 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. The numbers are going to subtract to give us 2, and the largest number will go with the minus sign. So which two numbers will subtract to give us 2? That's going to be 4 and 6. And that means the largest number will be the 6. So it's going to be 4 and -6. Again, keep the first term, keep the last term, break up the middle one. So I've got a 6 and a 4. I'll probably put the 6 with the 3 and the positive 4x with the 8. Split those up and pull out a 3. Oops, why is this all of a sudden becoming an n or an x? Oops, why is that? Oh, you are an n. You're an n. There we go. So I'm going to pull out a 3n, leaving me with an n minus 2, which means I should end up with an n minus 2 down here. And to do that, I'm going to divide both of these by 4. So I'm factoring out a positive 4. And we're left with n minus 2 and 3n plus 4. Man, that's easy, huh? All right. Says the guy who's done about a zillion of these things. And that's basically what it takes. Just repetition, repetition, repetition. Do 100 of them and you'll sort of have it stuck in your brain, and it just becomes as natural as breathing. Not really. Anyways, C. All right, what do we have? We've got a 12x squared minus 8x plus 1, and we've already recognized that we can't pull anything out of those three terms. 12 times 1 is 12. Break that down into 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. And we've got two numbers that are going to add to equal -8. So that's going to be -2 and a -6. So keep the same process. The first term stays the same. The last term stays the same. We're going to break up the middle term. We're going to throw some brackets around it. And we're going to factor something out. So in this case, I'd factor out a 6x. And I'm going to be left with 2, oops, that's not a 2, that's a 2. 2x minus 1, which means I should end up with a 2x minus 1 again. Notice again that I've got the opposite signs in there, so what I pulled out was a -1, which will invert the signs inside that bracket. And I've got a common 2x minus 1, and I have a 6x minus 1. And we are done. All right, number 5, example 5, factor again. Whoa, there's a lot of this factoring going on. So let's take a look and see what we got. 12, 15, -7y, -2y. So in this case, it seems to be reversed a little bit. Nothing common in there. So We like to have it in descending order, so I think that's the first thing I would do is, recognize I got three terms. I got this positive 15, I've got a negative 7y, and I've got a negative 2y squared. So putting those circles around it, make sure that you keep the correct sign with that term. So I'm going to rewrite this in descending order. We've got a negative 2y squared minus 7y plus 15. Okay, so in this case, I want to do the same thing. I'm going to basically multiply the 2 times the 15, giving us a 30. That breaks down into 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. They're going to add together to give us a negative 7. So which ones are going to add together to give us a negative 7? 5 plus 6, no. 3 plus 10, no. 2 minus 15, no. None of that seems to work. Well, I think the problem might be this guy right here, that negative sign, where we need to have a positive a. So let's just back it up a little bit. What can we do to change this so we have a positive a? Well, I'll factor out a negative 1. So essentially, right off the bat, I'm going to factor out a negative 1, leaving me with a positive 2y squared, a positive 7y, and a negative 15. Okay, so now what do we got? We've got 2 times 15, which is 30 again, 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. This time, because it's negative right here, they're going to subtract to give us a positive 7. So which ones will subtract to give us a positive 7? These two right there, 3 and 10. And the largest sign is going to go with the 10, which is positive, which means the 3 will be negative. So I've already got my negative 1 pulled out, and now I'm going to break this down into, again, keep the first term, keep the last term, and break it down. Now I'll put the 10, which is positive 10y, with the 2, and I'll put the negative 3y with the 15. We're going to that's our broken down trinomial right here, which we're going to split up again, just like we did in previous examples. So I still have my negative 1 pulled out. And what else do I have? Well, I'm going to pull out of this first binomial inside here a 2y, leaving me with a y plus 5, which means I should have a y plus 5 remaining on the other one. So what am I pulling out of there? It looks like I'd have to divide it by a negative 3, divided by negative 3. And that will work out. So I pulled out a negative 3. So in this case, what do I have? I've got a negative 1. I've got a y plus 5, which is these two canceled, and I'm left with a 2y minus 3. Don't trust me? Well, again, what do? Expand this thing out and then simplify it, and hopefully we end up back to that form right there. I'll leave that for you to do. Okay, we'll just minimize this guy right here. Shove it over to the side, and let's move to the next one, which is, let's see, what do we got? Letter B, 15k squared plus 5k minus 10. So now in this case, notice that we got a 15, a 5, and a 10. They all have the factor 5, so we can pull out a common factor here. So I guess the first thing we should do is pull out the 5, leaving us with 3k squared plus 5k minus 2. The 3 times the 2 is going to give us a 6, and that will break down into 1 and 6, 2 and 3, and they're going to subtract to give us a positive 5. So that will be the 6 minus 1. And the largest term is going to be positive, so it's going to be a positive 6 and a negative 1. Okay, so let's go back to our process. We still have the 5. This breaks down into a 3k squared. Keep the first one. Keep the last one. Break this one down into 6 and negative 1. So I'll put the positive 6x with the 3 and the minus x with the 2. And we will break that into 2 and start pulling things out of that bracket right there. So what do we got? 3k. What? Okay, I keep seeming to do this where I want to convert all the variables to x's. They are k's. All right, so I can pull a 3k out of there, leaving us with k plus 2, which means I should have a k plus 2 remaining inside here. And again, I've got a negative k minus 2, so we pulled out a negative 1. And now I just say I've got a 5, a k plus 2, and a 3k minus 1. And again, if we expand this one right here, it should check out to be exactly like what we started with. All right. Okay, the last one in this lesson, class example 6. And let's analyze what we got. 2x squared minus 5xy plus 2y squared. So what has changed? Well, we basically have got this squared on the last term, and I've got two variables in the middle term. But if we just follow the same steps and sort of bring back some of the strategies from previous lessons, we should be okay. All right, so is there anything common? No. So we're going to start with a 2x squared minus 5xy plus 2y. And I'm going to multiply the 2 times 2, which gives us 4. Break that down into 1 and 4, 2 and 2. And they're going to add together to give us a negative 5. So 4 plus 1 is 5, and they're both going to be negative. So again, we're going to keep the first term, keep the last term, break down the middle term. So I've got a negative 4xy and a negative xy, which is just negative 1xy. Break this down into two binomials right there, and let's start extracting or factoring out, pulling out something common. In this first one, we're going to pull out a 2 and an x, leaving us with x minus 2y. Again, what does that mean? Well, I need to end up with an x minus 2y. So it's like, what did I pull out of here to get with an x minus 2y? Okay, now I know why that doesn't work, because there's this squared right here. Forgot to put that there. Okay, so this would be y squared and y squared. Now it makes more sense. What did we pull out? We pulled out a y. Now, if I pull out a positive y, that's going to leave me with a negative x and a positive 2y inside here. But I want it inverted, so I'm going to pull out a negative 1y or a negative y. Okay, and there we go. So we got x minus 2y, and that's both those, and I also have a 2x minus y. And again, check it by expanding, gathering terms, simplifying, and putting it in descending order. Okay, let's move on to the class example 6b. Okay, so they're going to change something up here on us. So let's see, can I factor anything out of there? Negative. Okay, so Maybe what's they're changing is this was a positive and now it's a negative. I guess that's probably the extent of the change here. So 2n squared minus 7nm minus 15m. Let's not forget that squared this time. 2 times 15 gives us 30. That breaks down into 1 and 30. 2 and 15. 3 and 10. 5 and 6. They're going to subtract to give us negative 7. That would be 3 and 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. The largest term is going to be negative. So I'm going to put the negative with the 10 and positive with the 3. Keep the first term, 2n squared. Keep the last term, 15m squared. Break up the middle one. What do I want to do? I'll put the negative 10 nm with the first one, and then the positive 3 nm with the second one. Split these up and pull something out. So I'm going to pull out a 2n, leaving me with n minus 5m, which means I'm going to should have down here an n minus 5m again. So what did I divide all of this by to get n minus 5m? Looks like I just divided the whole thing by 3. So that means I pulled out a positive 3. And we can just check 3 times n is 3. No, I've pulled out 3m. I got to get rid of that m as well. So I'll just move this guy over a little bit, make some room for the m. So I pulled out a 3m. That looks better. Okay, and now we're just going to put this back together into 2 binomials. The common binomial is n minus 5m. And this one goes together to form 2n plus 3m. And we're done. All right, so this lesson is complete. So we have our in-class assignment again. The first one, letter A, 5x squared minus 23x minus 10. You need to factor. Whoa, that's a big fat F, isn't it? Factor all of these. So 5x squared minus 23x minus 10. Letter B is 12m squared minus 11m minus 5. And C is 6x squared plus 11xy minus 7y squared. You will complete that and bring it to class on the day that it is due. And in class, we'll work on questions 3 through 13 on pages 359 to 363.